The day after my father was buried, my stepmother changed the locks on the house. Not a week later. Not a month later. The very next day. I stood on the front porch carrying a box of my father's belongings when I realized my key no longer worked. When she opened the door, she looked me straight in the eye and said something I'll never forget. "You don't belong here anymore." At that moment, I thought I had lost everything. What I didn't know was that my father had been planning for this exact moment. And 3 months later, my stepmother's entire world came crashing down. My name is Sarah. My parents divorced when I was 12. A few years later, my father married a woman named Linda. At first, she acted like she wanted to be part of the family. She smiled. Bought me gifts. Called me sweetheart. But the moment she married my father, everything changed. She slowly began pushing me out of his life. If I called him, she would answer and say he was busy. If I visited, she'd suddenly have plans for the two of them. Every holiday became awkward. Every family gathering felt uncomfortable. And somehow, she always made herself look like the victim. My father noticed some of it. But he hated conflict. He always told me to give it time. Unfortunately, time only made things worse. As the years passed, Linda became obsessed with money. She constantly talked about inheritance, property, retirement accounts, investments. Whenever my father wasn't around, she'd make strange comments. One day she laughed and said, "You know, everything eventually belongs to the spouse." I didn't think much of it then. But looking back, it feels chilling. Then my father got sick. Very sick. The diagnosis shocked everyone. Within months, he went from active and energetic to spending most of his days in bed. I visited whenever I could. But Linda controlled everything. Sometimes she wouldn't even let me see him. She claimed he needed rest. That visitors stressed him out. But deep down, I felt something wasn't right. One afternoon, I arrived unexpectedly. As I entered the house, I heard shouting. Linda was arguing with my father. She was demanding he sign documents. When she noticed me, she immediately stopped talking. My father looked exhausted. Terrified, even. I asked him later what happened. He simply said not to worry about it. But I did worry. A lot. A few months later, my father passed away. It was the hardest day of my life. I could barely function. Yet somehow, Linda seemed more focused on paperwork than grief. During the funeral, she kept talking to lawyers, bankers, real estate agents, anyone connected to my father's finances. Then came the day after the burial. The lock change. The moment she told me I wasn't family anymore. She refused to let me collect childhood photos, family keepsakes, even personal letters my father had written to me. Everything remained inside that house. I was devastated. But that wasn't the worst part. A week later, she announced that my father had left everything to her. Everything. The house. The savings. The investments. Every single asset. I felt sick. I couldn't understand it. My father loved me. Why would he leave me nothing? Linda seemed delighted by my confusion. She even said, "Your father made his choice." For weeks, I questioned everything. Had I misunderstood our relationship? Had he secretly stopped caring? The doubt nearly destroyed me. Then something unexpected happened. 3 weeks later, I received a phone call. The caller introduced himself as my father's attorney. He asked me to come to his office immediately. My heart raced. When I arrived, he closed the door and slid a sealed envelope across the desk. My name was written on the front, in my father's handwriting. The lawyer explained that my father had instructed him to deliver it only after his death. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. My father wrote, "Sarah, if you're reading this, Linda has probably shown you her true colors." My eyes filled with tears. He knew. He had known all along. The letter continued. He explained that he had spent years documenting suspicious behavior. He believed Linda cared more about his money than his family. And because he feared exactly what might happen after his death, he had made separate arrangements. Then the lawyer placed another document on the table. A trust agreement. One I had never seen before. My father had secretly transferred most of his assets into a protected family trust years earlier. Assets Linda couldn't touch. The house she was living in wasn't actually hers. Several investment accounts were protected. Even part of the land she planned to sell remained under the trust. And the sole beneficiary was me. The next few months were brutal. Linda fought everything. She hired lawyers. Filed challenges. Made accusations. But every document supported my father's wishes. The evidence was overwhelming. The trust was legal. Valid. And impossible to overturn. One by one, her plans collapsed. The house had to be transferred. The accounts were frozen. Properties she thought she owned were never hers to begin with. The same confidence she displayed after the funeral slowly disappeared. Then came the final blow. During legal proceedings, investigators discovered she had attempted to hide certain financial transactions. That discovery triggered even more problems for her. Suddenly, the woman who thought she had won everything was fighting to protect herself. Karma had arrived. And it arrived fast. Months later, I finally walked back into my childhood home. Not as a visitor. Not as someone being tolerated. But as the rightful owner. The first thing I did was go to my father's study. I sat in his old chair and reread the letter. I cried for hours. Not because of the money. Not because of the house. But because he had protected me. Even after he was gone. He knew exactly who Linda was. And he made sure her manipulation wouldn't destroy the family he loved. Today, people sometimes ask if I hate my stepmother. The truth is, I don't. Hatred takes too much energy. What I feel is gratitude. Gratitude that my father saw the truth. Gratitude that he planned ahead. And gratitude that justice eventually prevailed. As for Linda, the last time I heard about her, she was still telling people she had been treated unfairly. But the facts tell a different story. She thought she could erase me from my father's life. Instead, she exposed herself. And in the end, the biggest secret my father left behind wasn't money. It was proof that love is stronger than manipulation. And that sometimes, the truth wins even after death.